Well, to help us understand what's at stake for civilians caught in the crossfire, notably children, I'm joined by a UNICEF spokesperson from Gaza, James Elder. James, thanks so much for joining us in what is obviously a very stressful environment. What has this ceasefire allowed you to do differently?
Well, it's allowed us to be safe, firstly, in terms of getting aid to people. It's allowed us to get the biggest distributions of aid to the north in a month. I was there today. I've literally just come back. I can't overstate the desperation, the distress, the trauma of people there. Entire apartment blocks reduced to rubble, churches within hospitals acting as emergency wards. Those too have not been spared. So it's allowed us to act on some of that desperation for food and water, seeing children who are now gaunt and very thin. Getting medical supplies is what UNICEF took today, IV solutions, rehydration solutions, emergency kits. So it's a very good start across the base of the United Nations and all the partners, the Egyptian Red Crescent, the Palestinian Red Crescent, but it has to continue. The destruction of Gaza and the mass killing of children is not going to bring peace and safety. We need this kind of aid day after day after day. Such is the enormity of devastation across Gaza.
And what do you find is the most difficult challenge that your organization is facing in terms of getting that to the north?
Time right now. The last few days have been very successful. So now it's about time. We need this pause to continue. It strikes me as I'm perplexed by the idea that we can have a pause for a few days so we can see how desperate people are who've seen their homes destroyed, who can't provide safety or water or food for their families. And just as we start to reach them, we get in a day or two's time, and again we start to see the bombardment and burning of children. I'm sorry to be so graphic. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals. I'm constantly seeing children with the most graphic wounds of war. So the response is getting to be how it should be, but it simply has to continue into next week. We need a lasting peace, or we are just going to see more devastation and more deaths of children.
And I mean, that flows from something that your organization recently said. It said that Gaza was the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. What is exactly the unique challenge in this particular conflict that is facing children?
I think they're under multiple threats. One, of course, is we've seen the reports now of more than 6,000 children killed. Now, I mean, I've seen these children. I was on a bus yesterday that came down from Shifa Hospital in the north, and children with limbs cut off have spent 4 days in a bus, and with terrible burns. The bus smelt of decomposing flesh. That reality has been across Gaza for thousands and thousands of children. At the same time, you've had such a denial of access to water and to food that we risk now disease outbreaks and so on. So we're seeing children getting very, very sick. Those are the two major areas, both getting sick because they're denied aid and what the bombardments have done. Now we're getting that life-saving aid to people, but we cannot see a resumption of attacks. I sat just yesterday with a little boy, Omar, and he was a really bright, sparky child. He was 7, and he'd lost his mum. His dad had been killed, and his twin brother had been killed, but he was still able to speak with me, gently, but speak. And I said to him, Omar, you're clearly a clever boy. And he just responded, well, my brother was more clever. And as he spoke to me, he kept closing his eyes. And I asked his auntie, why does he do that? And she just said, he's so terrified that he's going to forget what his mum and dad look like. So he keeps closing his eyes because he doesn't want to lose them in his memory in the same way he's lost them in real life. That story is across Gaza. I have barely met someone who's not lost a loved one. So the aid is good. The aid is getting to where it needs to go, but we cannot turn this off in 2 days' time and return to the bombardment of children.
A very important message for all the stakeholders in this conflict. Thanks so much, James. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but just keep safe all the while in that situation. James Elder coming to us from Gaza, where he is the spokesperson for UNICEF.